All right, thank you very much. I don't know whether that was the right answer or not. In the 1950s, arrayed around many of the states in the United States was a considerable volume of intercontinental ballistic missile silos. And all of these missiles were generally aimed at cities in the USSR because we were in the middle of the Cold War. And each of these ICBMs had to fly several thousand miles over the pole and come in pretty accurately on their designated target. And the ICBMs are built out of steel. And the nice thing about steel is great rigidity, relatively light, and good for building things that fly and ultimately fall out of the sky. The problem that the US military had is with all of these ICBMs sitting in silos, doing pretty much nothing, just waiting for somebody to push buttons or turn keys, is that they would start to rust. And having a rusty ICBM, I would assert, is probably not a good thing. You really don't want to fire it and have it go just a couple of hundred yards and then come back to land. So what the military did is they put out a call to a number of companies, and one company in particular in San Diego, California, for something to coat these missiles to protect them from rust. This company worked on many, many compounds over a number of months and eventually came up with a compound that they could apply to the side of the missiles and stop them from rusting. It was the 40th compound that they tested out. And it was known as water displacement 40. And if you're familiar with WD-40, that's the genesis, that's the origin of where it came from. It was a big problem the military had and a solution that was invented, that was created. Now, there's a limited number of ICBMs in the world, or certainly were at that time. So what does a business that's been doing all of this work for the military do there afterwards? Well, what the CEO had noticed is that staff would be taking small quantities of this compound and using it to lubricate squeaky chairs or squeaky wheels, doors that didn't quite open. They'd use them in their cars. They'd use them around the house. And he kind of figured out that there was a much bigger opportunity for his business than just protecting ICBMs. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about change. I want to talk about the journey. I want to punctuate the comments that Joe made this morning about the journey that Time Inc. is on. And so much of what we do is focused on solving our own problems, taking advantage of our own opportunities. But in doing so, there's lots of other people we can help out. Certainly, the very large media companies have got large engineering organizations, large technology groups that can build and develop and extend a lot of core critical technology, things that you really need to control to really differentiate yourself. When you get down to the smaller and the medium-sized companies, just don't have the funds to be able to do that. You're using a lot of off-the-shelf third-party products, which are invariably expensive, and you have effectively arm's-length control. If you need a change, you want a new feature that's better going to represent your content, then it's either a lengthy process and or an expensive process, and maybe you don't get what you want. Now, there are plenty of third-party products that can be very, very effective, but the danger is third-party vendors are trying to create solutions that are great for everybody. So eventually you get down to lowest common denominator. And that's, there's still a business opportunity there, but again, if you really want to differentiate yourself, then some degree of customization, some degree of in-house technology is really important. With due apologies to Marshall McLuhan, the media is the message. Well, the content is the message. The media now encompasses so many different channels: mobile, web. Of course, we've still got print, a lot of it. We've got audio, we've got video, we've got sound, and as Joe mentioned this morning, we do an awful lot more in terms of events to be able to reach out and engage those very passionate audiences. So there's a lot of different channels that we all need to take advantage of, and it's just very expensive and very, very confusing to do. So one of the sort of key theses of what I want to talk about is how that which we are doing can help some of our smaller or medium-sized, maybe even eventually some of our larger partners. You know, we have an organization down in Tampa, TCS, that does distribution for not only Time Inc. magazines, but also for a lot of other magazines as well. So as we've innovated on behalf of ourselves, effectively scratching our own itch, we've been able to innovate on behalf of those other companies as well. And our approach is very simple. We scratch our own itch first. We find out those problems, those gaps, those voids, those immediate needs that we can't satisfy anywhere else. And we want to first and foremost make it easy for our own people. You know, I came across from 8 years at Amazon just about 18 months ago. And you know, Amazon is fundamentally a retailer. There's nothing special about selling cornflakes. There's nothing special about selling shoes. What drives an awful lot, or what has driven an awful lot of growth in that business, is excellence in engineering, is solving problems, really intensely listening to customers, and then turning those solutions into those that partners and other vendors can use, and that's really fueled the growth. About half of Amazon sales come from third parties. When the company started out, it was all 100% Amazon. But those third-party sales are effectively sort of free cash. All Amazon is doing is a bit of data processing. It's not actually having to ship very much of that stuff, although it does ship some with Prime. So if we make it easy for our own people, then that potentially can create opportunities for going out and helping other folks as well. Certainly our own staff around the world, but also helping out our partners, maybe our content licensees. So of course what we do is we figure out the itch, we scratch it, and then we go and try and solve their problem. So Joe mentioned a whole bunch of our stats this morning. I'll put them up on the screen just to jog your memory. The key thing and the key message on this slide is that last line, that editorial and engineering partnership. When I came into Time, we had an IT department. Now to me, IT is the guys that load the tapes on the IBM mainframes that I used to play around with about 30 years ago. Yes, I really am that old. And part of the reason that I came out of the high-tech industry to work with Time, not just the fact that I really deeply respected the brands, the content, the message, the journalism that was going on, but part of the reason I came across was to give a big boost in regards to engineering, innovation, and excellence. Again, we still buy in a lot of products, but the things that we rely on day in and day out to differentiate our content, to get it in the hands of our customers in the right place at the right time, and whether it's on our properties or whether it's on a Facebook, whether it's on an Apple, whether it's on a Google, wherever it is, doesn't matter. We just need to listen to our customers, understand what they're saying, understand what they're consuming, and deliver that material to them, again, as fast as efficiently, and tuning it on a consistent and continuing process. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of things that we've done over the last 18 months. These are just examples of the whole boatload more. And if you want to talk about any of the other ones throughout the day, I'll be around and would enjoy getting into those conversations. So I joined the company in February 2014. And when I came in, I found that Time had 5 global data centers around the world, including the 21st floor of the Time Life building in New York City. It's on 50th and 6th. Some of the most expensive real estate you can possibly imagine on the planet, and we're using it as a data center, which is kind of insane. So, and actually I lie a little bit. It's not that the data center is on the 21st floor. The data center is the 21st floor. And the cost of those floor plates runs into the tens of millions of dollars on an annual basis. So incredibly expensive, incredibly inefficient. And yet here we are as a newly spun off company trying to build a cash balance sheet so we can go and invest, so we can do acquisitions, so we can fund the journey to delivering that content to our customers where they really want to reach it. So, job number 1, take cost out of the business. Job number 2, or job in parallel with number 1, is take that cost out and be able to apply a bunch of that expense to be able to build that core critical technology necessary to grow our business. So, very easy and very quick decision. I want to get out of the data center business. That's not our core competency. Our core competency is editorial, it's journalism, it's photography, it's video. We should not be running data centers. So we made a decision, let's move to the cloud. We moved to Amazon Web Services, plenty of other cloud vendors out there. I just happen to know that one very well. One of my last jobs at Amazon was moving all the Amazon websites onto AWS. I knew what the cost savings could be. So I went and did the same thing at Time. And by the end of last year, we had 100% of our UK brands on AWS. We're now at the point of 76% of our US brands on AWS, and that's serving the print, but it's also serving our websites, it's also serving our mobile sites as well. We built effectively, we recreated our data center in the Amazon system. Our hosting costs dropped dramatically. It's about a $6 million annual saving by getting out of our own data centers. Plus, it just removes a whole swath of engineering leadership time and attention if somebody else is running those systems. And again, it's not core critical to our business. The other key thing is, as we see peaks and troughs of people visiting our websites, our mobile properties, when a big news item breaks, the traffic to our sites can go up quite dramatically. And in order to predict that, it's almost impossible. So you have to hold an amount of hardware capacity necessary to handle those peaks. But if you overrun that, then you've got to start throttling and turning people away. And we try and do that as nicely as possible, but that's clearly not ideal when we're trying to serve ads that are funding this whole process. So in technology, there's this notion of time to traffic. From when there is a traffic demand, how long does it take to actually put new capacity online? And at Time, it was about 4 months. Okay? Which, if there was a story that's peaking and it's going to peak for a couple of hours, 4 months later, having the capacity to support it is probably not a good thing. And that 4 months is what's involved with that is buying, requisitioning, taking delivery of hardware, burning it in, loading your software, putting it in racks, shipping it around the planet. It's just woefully inefficient. With web services, I can just turn on additional capacity within about 5 minutes and have that capacity taking traffic in about 15 minutes. So it gives me a lot of flexibility to rapidly scale up. Plus, I can also release that capacity and scale down when that peak of that news story or other content element has disappeared. That's fine. And I can recover my cost by scaling back and returning that hardware to Amazon for them to use for other purposes. So moving all of this stuff across was great for us. The other side benefit, the itch, we scratched our own itch by saving money. The other benefit we got out of this is with AWS comes a whole bunch of fundamental services, things that we had been writing ourselves or relying on fairly small third-party companies to provide this very specialized piece of technology we had to bring in, configure, deploy, manage, and maintain, complex and expensive. By now being able to just leverage these building blocks that are available on AWS, our engineering processes got much faster, much more agile, which is incredibly important. Previous speaker mentioned that need to have high degrees of agility to be able to test, to be able to play, be able to experiment. Yes, we're driven by the data, and we trust the data, but you've got to gather the data. The best way to gather it is rather than intellectually sitting around with a whiteboard or a spreadsheet trying to figure out what it should be and trying to forecast it, is actually running experiments and testing it out. And the good thing at Time is we've got a lot of customers. 155 million uniques every month gives us a big chunk of data. And by the way, that's a little segue into what I'll say right at the end, because those data benefit Time first and foremost. But sharing those data in the appropriate form, we don't want to be giving away personally identifiable information, but sharing those data in aggregate to our partners, and not just partners in terms of distribution or content distribution, things like that, syndication, but partners that are maybe advertisers or maybe end user organizations, enterprises that want to build a close relationship with us. Maybe they have data they want to blend in with ours. So having all of those data, very, 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 very important. So that's a huge benefit that we got out of AWS. From a mobile perspective, all of our websites are designed and implemented with responsive design. When you look at them on a website, on a PC, on a laptop, and when you look at them on an iPad, when you look at them on a phone, they will regenerate or change the format, the display format, to accommodate that device. There's a bunch of challenges with that. Ad blocking, has been mentioned about every other breath so far today. It's becoming more and more of a problem. And we're deeply engaged at the moment is trying to figure out ways to block ad blocking, but it's an arms race. As soon as we implement something, the ad blockers will implement something else. As soon as we implement something beyond that, they'll come back. It's an arms race. We're buying into that arms race. But it's an arms race that's worth fighting because the value of those ads are our lifeblood, certainly for our online properties. Yes, we sell subscriptions to our online properties. There are other ways of monetizing them, but ad revenue is certainly by far the largest. So ad blocking, poor performance. Because you're writing a one-size-fits-all for web and for mobile, then it's not really suitable for anybody. You're going to make some compromises along the way. And then, of course, when you're running on an iPhone, when you're running on an iPad, people expect the deep integration they get with other applications or capabilities of the native operating system on those devices. And with a web app, it's very difficult to get that. It's almost impossible to do that in a very authentic way. So these are a set of problems. So great, let's build native mobile applications. The problem about that when I came on board is it was costing us about $200,000 per native app. And that's software development, that's testing, that's deployment, that's going around the loop several times, maybe 4 or 5 times with Apple to get your application approved. Of course, there's certain limitations of things you can and can't do. And it was taking somewhere in the region of 6 to 7 months to get each of these apps out. Almost zero opportunity to experiment. The cycle to experiment was just far too long. So, okay, what do we want to do? We want to scratch our own itch. We want to solve our own problem or unleash the capability of mobile devices. We need to significantly drive down the cost of new native application development. So what we did is we built our own platform called Toro. Now, a very logical question is, why don't you use one of the very many off-the-shelf solutions that exist today? It's back to my original point. Serving this content to mobile and web is a core critical part of our business. Growing that digital revenue stream is massively important. And all of the solutions we looked at, very fine, but just didn't have all of the capabilities we needed, but also didn't give us the control to make the changes that we needed in that very rapid iterative development cycle. So we built our own platform. We used a bunch of open source. We licensed in some pieces of technology, but we have access, we have control over that code base. And now we've got it down to about a 1-week development cycle. Yes, it takes longer to further refine those applications, but we can get them built and we can get them out, certainly on Android in a week. It may take a little bit longer getting it out on Apple, just because of the process you have to go through with Apple, but at least our work is done. We're getting very good at anticipating where Apple could throw up any problems and just being able to make sure we engineer correctly for that. And the per cost side, if you're developing something in about a week, the cost is effectively tending to zero. Now, when we're rolling out half a dozen of these every month, of course, there is a very real cost there. But on a per-site basis, it tends to zero. So for certain of our brands, at the long tail of the income curve that really didn't have the funds to go and build their own native application, we can put something out rapidly, we can test, we can experiment, and we can determine whether we should put in more investment or whether we should say, no, this is not the right time to do it. We can also combine data and content from other sites, perhaps to come out with a new property or a new amalgam of several properties that may actually have greater value to our customers, but we can experiment with that. And one of the key points on this slide, it says content feed-based reading app. So this is part of our grander strategy, which is all of our content in a single digital asset management system for ease of discovery, selection, and publication, either on the site for which it was originally written, but also publish it across other sites. So for example, if you do a search on Time about a particular celebrity, yes, it'll give you the results from time.com, but it will also recommend content from all of our sites that deal with that particular search string, which is great for recirculation. Now, we're just at the early days of that, but rather than third-party ads that send people off our site, we go to an awful lot of time, effort, and energy to get people to come to our sites, to send them away again. We'd rather keep them through recirculation because we've got this breadth of content, and not only ours, but also our partners' content as well. We can keep on adding and adding to this. So that centralized content storage, ease of discovery, ease of selection, ease of deployment in a streaming manner is great. We can update content on mobile devices very rapidly, very richly, a lot of video, a lot of images, a lot of text that on demand may be sluggish to come down. We can push those out to devices in anticipation of customer need. So, another example, the Apple Watch solution we deployed in about a weekend. I think they started on Friday and finished off on Monday morning, but I'm kind of stretching it there. But about a weekend. And what had happened is Apple had given us an emulator. And the good thing about emulators is they generally don't emulate very well. So we built our solution. When we actually got our hands on a watch, we found out it didn't work very well and had to effectively go back and start again from scratch, but finished everything off in about a weekend. So rapid, iterative development and prototyping, bringing everybody together. And it also means that we invest very heavily in our platform. We're not doing a lot of custom bespoke work on a per site or per mobile application basis. We take the ideas from all of our staff around the world, build them into the platform, and then everybody else can leverage those. So it makes a big transitional difference for us. Again, reduction of cost, but bringing in that agility is really important. So instant ignition, very valuable for us, but also very valuable for some of our partners. This is technology for people that are in the same space, have the same editorial workflow, have the same problems and opportunities that we do to take advantage of similar sort of technology. And why I want to be in a point in 2016 of a number of these pieces of technology that we've built to solve our problems, to release them to partners wherever they are in the world. Especially those that are currently syndicating our content, that may be smaller companies that are challenged again with cost. Great, let's help them out there. Let's put these technologies in their hands and just make their life so much easier. Plus, the content comes already in the right format to be consumed by this technology. So we're solving that problem as well. And of course, with native apps, you don't have the ad blocking problem, well, just yet. We'll see what happens there. So, I mentioned there are a bunch of other areas, big data, gathering data from our customers, gathering data internally, either licensing it, merging it with other people's data, but doing things that go just beyond the walls of time is incredibly important. Page speed. When you render a full page, the longest page on Entertainment Weekly, which I think is about 12 feet long when if you actually printed it out. On a mobile device, it can take upwards of 8 seconds. We've taken some open source technology from Google. We've built a bunch of our own technology, effectively a black box that we can just run these pages through when the customers request them. And we're seeing the time drop by half. So now rendering a page, the long pages on entertainmentweekly.com, down from 8 seconds to about 4. And we just want to keep on driving it down from there. Everybody has that same problem. Pages that are not as fast as they would like, a lack of the expertise people in-house to go and do that very, very sort of craftsman kind of work of fine-tuning these things. Well, ultimately, we'll be able to provide that appliance to all of our brands around the world. But why not go further and license that technology and allow other people to do it? And in fact, not even license it so we deliver it to folks. We can just run it on AWS as software as a service. Requests come in for your pages, just pump them. It's a single call. You pump them through this appliance, and they'll shave off an awful lot of time by doing an awful lot of things that are very well known and understood in terms of image compression, spriting, a whole bunch of technology that can be brought to bear. We've just packaged it up in a single instance just to make life really easy. Information security is a huge thing, not just exfiltration of credit cards and data, but vandalism. If somebody comes and vandalizes a page on fortune.com and says some company is going public or some company is going to buy them, then markets can move. And that can be very dangerous, can be very financially impactful. So information security, and again, we're building up a big portfolio of tools there that we use ourselves. Everybody else has got the same challenges and the same opportunities, so we're thinking about sharing those. Rights management, I mentioned with the digital asset management system. Video is incredibly important. The solutions we're building there, core critical to our business, and we want to roll them out to everybody eventually. And then finally, ad blocking, we've got some techniques we're beginning to use. It's going to be that cat and mouse race. But you know, we've got to do it because otherwise we're not going to get the revenue. So, you know, kind of key closing point for me is the olden days of having an IT organization off on the corner, I think, have gone. I think the opportunity exists to bring the good technologists together with the great editorial people and get them working in concert to come up with the right mechanisms, the most cost-effective, the most agile mechanisms to deploy this great content and be very successful. And I don't think editorial and journalism and engineering can do it separately. I think they've got to work very closely together. So when you get back to your offices, no matter what line of business you're in, go find your local IT people, put your arms around them, give them a good back scratch, because I know that they can really make a significant difference for your business. Okay? Thank you.